Can you ever truly forget betrayal? Imagine this. 11 years of marriage, a child full of dreams, a promising future. Then, in a single moment, everything falls apart. The protagonist of this story is an ordinary man, someone who worked hard, cherished his family, and did everything he could to provide for them. But beneath the surface, a different reality was unfolding. Suspicious messages, peculiar coincidences, and a single confession from his son shattered the world he thought he knew. What happens when the truth blindsides you? More importantly, how do you move forward after experiencing heartbreak, deception, and the realization that a new life might already be waiting on the other side? Curious about how he navigated it all? Hello, my friend. I'm truly grateful to have you here on my channel. If this is your first visit, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Every like keeps me motivated. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's dive into the story. My wife and I are both 35 years old and have been married for 11 years. We live in a town that was once rural but has rapidly evolved into a suburban extension of a growing metropolitan area. When we graduated high school, our class had just over 200 students. Now, that number has more than doubled to nearly 500. I grew up on a farm, raised by my father after my mother left when I was young and never returned. From an early age, I worked alongside my dad, helping with farm chores until he decided to lease the land and take a factory job instead. The income from those leases allowed him to acquire more property during the Great Recession. One of these properties included a house, which he let me renovate and transform into a home for my future family. Though the property remains in a trust with his other land holdings, my wife and I handle all related expenses. My wife, on the other hand, came from a modest, middle-class background. Her family welcomed me warmly, always treating me with kindness and respect. They moved to our town when we were in junior high, and we started dating in high school. Once I secured steady employment, we got married. Before that, I took whatever jobs I could find, hauling junk, painting houses, anything that would cover the bills. Today, we have an 8-year-old son, and my wife stays home to care for him. I work as a route driver for a major snack company, continuously expanding my territory to ensure our products reach every local shop, grocery store, and gas station in the area. Since much of the region remains rural, my route covers a vast expanse. Our long-term plan was for my wife to eventually take over a second truck as our business grew. With a new Supercenter grocery store opening next year, gaining full ownership of my route could be a game changer for us. We've been together since shortly after high school, and while our marriage has been built on love, it hasn't been without its struggles, especially given my demanding work hours. I've always tried to be present, but I know I often fall short. Still, we find happiness in our life together, and we both adore our son. He's an energetic kid, deeply involved in sports. Basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring, and now flag football. This past spring, our marriage hit a rough patch. We sensed a growing distance between us and had an honest conversation, vowing to work on our relationship. From late April to mid-June, we reconnected in ways we hadn't in years. Our passion reignited, and we couldn't get enough of each other. Honestly, I struggled to keep up, juggling work and our renewed intimacy. But despite the challenges, I maintained my route while our son fully immersed himself in baseball season. Little did I know, the foundation I believed was strengthening was actually crumbling beneath me. I never missed a game, but my demanding job often kept me from attending practices. Many dads volunteered as assistant coaches, but that wasn't an option for me. My wife, however, stepped up whenever needed. Our son's baseball coach, Benjamin, had once been married to Miranda, one of my closest friends from high school. Miranda had always been the brightest in our class, and after college, she met Benjamin. They married young and had a son the same age as ours. Unfortunately, their marriage ended 3 years ago. Miranda moved back to town, relying on her parents for help with childcare, and about a year later, Benjamin followed, possibly hoping to be closer to his son or even rekindle things with Miranda. By June, my wife and I had settled back into our usual routines. In July, we had another serious talk, reaffirming our commitment to each other. We even went on vacation, hoping it would help us reconnect. But the spark between us remained inconsistent. Then, in mid-August, things reignited briefly, only to fizzle out again by September. Around that time, our son started flag football, and he absolutely loved it. One evening, I stopped by a practice and was surprised to see my wife standing next to Benjamin, clipboard in hand, helping run drills. Several other dads were also involved. Later that night, when I asked her about it, our son excitedly corrected me. She wasn't just helping. She was officially a coach. Apparently, when she signed him up, she had also volunteered for the role. It quickly became a major time commitment for her. She was constantly on her phone, mostly texting, sometimes making calls. But whenever I was around, it seemed to be mostly messages. Every afternoon after school, she and our son went to Benjamin's house, where he trained both boys in football. The extra practice was paying off. Our son and Benjamin's son were becoming standouts on the team. Then came the first game. After finishing my shift that morning, I arrived at the field and saw my wife standing beside Benjamin, giving instructions to the team. As I sat down, someone placed a chair next to mine, Miranda. We watched the game together, and at halftime, she turned to me with a serious expression and asked how my marriage was going. I told her everything was fine, but she didn't seem convinced. After a brief pause, she shared something her son had told her. On a rainy afternoon when practice was canceled, the boys had stayed inside playing video games at Benjamin's house. At one point, her son went to the kitchen to grab more juice and accidentally saw Benjamin and my wife kissing. Shocked, he quickly ran back to the game and later confided in Miranda that night. Something inside me shifted. I woke up at 4 a.m. as usual to drive 45 minutes to my warehouse for work. But that Monday, I set my alarm even earlier, 3:30 a.m. While my wife was still asleep, I took her phone. After several failed attempts, I finally cracked her passcode. As I scrolled through her messages, I found an endless thread of texts, some explicit, along with revealing photos she had sent. Without hesitation, I took screenshots of the evidence. From that moment on, everything changed. I usually set aside one day a week to stay in town, but occasionally, I'd return home for lunch, especially when our relationship seemed to be at its best. I would surprise her, yet more than once, when I called to check in, the house was empty. My calls went unanswered, and on several occasions, while driving past Benjamin's house, I noticed her car parked in his driveway. One evening, as I wrapped up work, I spotted her car at Benjamin's again. When I confronted her later, she claimed she had been out shopping. She apologized for not being home when I arrived, and I reassured her that my visit had been unplanned. Nothing for her to worry about. The following week, I decided to plan my lunch visit intentionally. I gave her advance notice of my visit, parked a short distance from Benjamin's house, and waited. Somehow, she didn't notice my truck. A few minutes later, she hurried out, got into her car, and drove straight home. I followed at a normal pace, and by the time I walked through the door, she was already in the kitchen, casually making me a sandwich. We had a light-hearted conversation over lunch, as if nothing was amiss. That Saturday, after my son's game, I took him home to change before dropping him off at my father's for a fishing trip. If he felt like it, he could even go for a swim. When I returned home, she was nowhere to be found. I decided to drive by Benjamin's house, and just as I suspected, her car was parked outside. I called her, and when she finally picked up, she sounded irritated. I asked what she was doing there, but all I got in response was silence. I told her to get dressed and come home. By the time she walked through the door, I was already sitting at the table, waiting. She stormed in furious, accusing me of making baseless accusations. I remained calm and told her to sit down. She refused, growing more defensive, but I spoke firmly, insisting that she stop yelling and take a seat. I had something to show her. She demanded to know what I had in the folder I was holding, but I told her she would find out soon enough. One by one, I placed printed screenshots of her messages on the table. Her outrage flared as she scolded me for invading her privacy, but when I revealed explicit photos she had sent, her words failed her. That was it. I told her she had until the following Sunday to pack her belongings. On Monday, I would be meeting with a lawyer. She could take her clothes and personal items. The rest could be sorted later. She broke down, sobbing and apologizing repeatedly. I asked her something I had once read in an advice thread. "What did you think was going to happen?" She had no response. There was nothing left to discuss. Since then, I've been staying at my father's house. On Sunday, I brought my son back home so he could catch the school bus in the morning. I explained to him that while his mother and I wouldn't be living together anymore, he would still stay in his home. That evening, when I returned, all of her belongings were gone. We had agreed that she would pick up our son after school. She had the option to stay with him at the house until I got home or take him to her parents' place. No matter what had happened between us, she was still his mother, and we would have to co-parent. The divorce is now in progress, and she will officially be served next week. I won't embarrass her by having the papers delivered publicly. I've already informed her they're coming. She asked to retrieve a few more items from the house, but my lawyer advised against it. If she wanted anything else, she could go through the legal process and file a formal request. I'm not particularly attached to most of the household belongings, so she will likely get whatever she asks for. Interestingly, she hasn't requested any of her clothing or makeup. People often ask me what she's doing now. She's living at her parents' house, and my son spends his afternoons there until I finish work. I've made a point to leave by 5 p.m. each day to avoid staying late. My lawyer is also working with another attorney to ensure that my business remains protected throughout the divorce. Even my father has stepped in, offering to buy my work route and keep me on as an employee if necessary. I know child support is inevitable, and we will share custody. The nights feel lonelier after my son goes to bed, but I've been finding ways to stay occupied. A few personal projects have kept me focused. Friends have also rallied around me, offering to help with babysitting or bring meals over. Last Saturday, instead of spreading out along the sidelines, most of the parents moved their chairs closer to mine. That small gesture meant a lot. There's only one more game before the playoffs, and soon the season will wrap up. Basketball starts next, and nearly every parent I've spoken to has already decided to request that Benjamin not be assigned as their child's coach. People also ask about Miranda. She's been a close friend for years, and some wonder if we'll end up together. Right now, my focus is on healing and adjusting to this new chapter in my life. My priority is being there for my son. I once mentioned that Miranda was the smartest person in our class, and that still holds true. She's an incredible woman, but I feel like I would only hold her back. Besides, we're both navigating difficult transitions. Her ex even moved back recently, possibly to reconcile. This chapter of my life has come to a close. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Betrayal isn't just about infidelity. It's about shattering everything that was built over the years. When problems arise in a marriage, they should be confronted together, not avoided through deception. The truth always comes out, and once trust is lost, things will never be the same. But betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be a turning point, a chance to reflect, learn, and move forward toward a future built on honesty, respect, and genuine love. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, check out other gripping videos on my channel. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.